They lose control not because life is cruel, but because they surrender the command of their own minds. Every failure, every fear, every excuse begins the moment a person allows circumstances to think for them. Control is not lost in a single dramatic moment. It slips away quietly, through doubt, through indecision, through the habit of blaming the world for what the self has refused to master. Loss of control begins with loss of mental discipline, because the mind is the first instrument of command. Before a person loses direction in action, they lose it in thought. Disorder in the outer world always follows disorder in the inner world. A person who cannot govern their thinking becomes governed by impulses, by moods, by the voices of doubt and delay. Mental discipline is the habit of choosing what to think and what to reject. Yet most people allow their thoughts to wander without purpose, and then wonder why their lives move without direction. Every weakness of character can be traced back to an undisciplined mind. Procrastination, fear, and confusion are not born in circumstances, they are born in thought. The moment a person allows fear to settle in the mind without challenge, control begins to slip. Fear multiplies when it is not questioned. Doubt grows when it is not confronted. An idle mind becomes a playground for every excuse that keeps action postponed. The person believes they are waiting for the right moment, but in truth, they are waiting for courage they have not trained themselves to use. Mental discipline is not a gift. It is a habit formed through repetition of deliberate thinking. A disciplined mind does not react, it chooses. It does not panic, it evaluates. It does not surrender to temporary emotion, it remains loyal to long-term purpose. Without this discipline, a person becomes a servant to their feelings. One day they feel confident and take action. The next day they feel uncertain and retreat. Their progress rises and falls with their mood, and soon they believe the world is unpredictable, when in reality their thinking is, loss of mental discipline also means loss of concentration. A scattered mind cannot build anything lasting. Attention divided is power divided. When a person allows every distraction to claim their focus, they lose the ability to direct energy toward a single aim. Their efforts become shallow and unfinished. They begin many things but complete few. Control does not disappear suddenly. It dissolves through small acts of neglect, through the habit of starting without finishing, through the comfort of avoiding difficult thought. An undisciplined mind magnifies obstacles and minimizes opportunity. It sees problems as permanent and effort as painful. It exaggerates the risk of failure and ignores the cost of inaction. Such a mind looks for safety instead of growth and calls it wisdom. Yet true safety is found only in strength of thought. A disciplined mind recognizes that every challenge contains a lesson and every delay contains a test of resolve. Where the undisciplined mind complains, the disciplined mind plans. Mental discipline also determines self-respect. A person who cannot control their thoughts cannot control their promises. They make decisions and then abandon them. They set goals and then excuse themselves from them. Each broken promise weakens their confidence. Soon they begin to doubt their own word. When a person no longer trusts their own decisions, they look outward for direction, and control passes to circumstances, to opinions, to chance. The disciplined mind understands that thought is a tool, not a master. It trains itself to focus on solutions rather than fears, on action rather than delay, on growth rather than comfort. It feeds on ideas that strengthen belief and starves those that weaken it. Such a mind does not deny difficulty, but it refuses to kneel before it. It uses reason as a guide and desire as fuel. It forms hobby. Cheese of reflection, decision, and persistence until control becomes natural. Loss of mental discipline is not always dramatic. It appears in small forms: the habit of postponing effort, the tendency to blame conditions, the comfort of following the crowd. These habits seem harmless, but they quietly remove authority from the self. The person becomes reactive instead of creative. They wait for permission instead of making decisions. They ask for assurance instead of building certainty. The mind that is trained becomes a source of order in a world of uncertainty. It directs emotion instead of obeying it. It uses failure as instruction instead of punishment. It chooses its responses instead of borrowing them from fear or habit. Where mental discipline is absent, confusion takes its place. Where confusion rules, purpose fades. Where purpose fades, control dissolves into drift, and drift becomes a way of life for those who never learn to command their own thoughts. Fear replaces action when Purpose is absent because the human mind cannot remain empty. If it is not occupied with a clear aim, it will be filled with uncertainty. Purpose gives direction to thought, and thought gives direction to action. Without purpose, the mind wanders, and in its wandering it meets fear. Fear thrives in confusion. It grows strongest where no definite plan exists. A person without purpose waits for instruction from circumstances, and circumstances rarely speak with clarity. When purpose is missing, every decision feels dangerous. The mind searches for certainty but finds only doubt. Action becomes heavy and delay becomes comfortable. The person does not refuse to act openly, they simply postpone. They call it preparation, but it is often disguised fear. Without purpose, effort feels risky because there is no clear reward to focus on. The mind asks, why move? And fear answers, stay where you are. In this exchange, fear wins by default. Purpose acts as a filter for fear. When a person knows what they want, fear becomes a warning rather than a ruler. It signals where strength is needed, not where retreat is required. But when purpose is absent, fear becomes the only guide. It chooses the smallest step, the safest option, the path that demands the least courage. Over time, this habit builds a life of avoidance. The person becomes skilled at escaping discomfort, but unskilled at achieving results. Fear also feeds on imagination. An undirected imagination creates images of loss, failure, and rejection. These images feel real to the mind, and the body reacts as if the danger already exists. Purpose redirects imagination toward construction instead of destruction. It paints pictures of progress instead of disaster. Without this redirection, the mind rehearses defeat before effort has even begun. A person with no purpose becomes sensitive to every obstacle. A small problem appears as a major threat. A minor setback becomes a final verdict. This happens because there is no larg, your goal to outweigh the difficulty. Purpose gives perspective. It makes temporary pain seem small compared to lasting achievement. Without it, pain becomes the main story, and fear becomes the narrator. Fear replaces action most easily when a person measures themselves by comfort instead of growth. Purpose demands movement, and movement demands discomfort. Without purpose, discomfort feels unnecessary. The person asks, why should I struggle? And fear offers rest as an answer. Comfort becomes a prison with soft walls. Inside it, nothing hurts, but nothing changes. In the absence of purpose, opinions of others gain power. A person who does not know their own direction begins to follow the direction of the crowd. Fear of judgment becomes stronger than desire for progress. Action is postponed until approval is guaranteed, and approval rarely arrives for those who have not yet acted. The person waits to be chosen instead of choosing themselves. Fear also replaces action when purpose is rode instead of created. Goals taken from others carry weak authority. They do not stir deep emotion or steady commitment. When difficulty appears, borrowed purpose collapses. True purpose is personal. It grows from inner conviction, not outer comparison. Without this inner source, effort feels forced and fear feels natural. Action weakens fear, but only when it is guided by intention. Random effort does not build confidence. Directed effort does. Purpose organizes energy. It tells the mind where to focus and the body where to move. When purpose is clear, even small actions feel meaningful. Each step becomes proof of control. When purpose is unclear, even large efforts feel empty, and fear returns to question their value. The habit of acting without purpose leads to exhaustion. The habit of not acting leads to regret. Both increase fear, but only one offers escape. Purpose transforms fear from an obstacle into a test. It gives fear a role instead of allowing it authority. The person no longer asks how to avoid fear, but how to move through it. Fear does not disappear when purpose appears. It changes position. It moves from the front to the side. It stops commanding and starts advising. The mind listens but does not obey. Action continues, not because fear is gone, but because purpose is stronger. Where purpose is weak, fear speaks loudly. Where purpose is strong, fear becomes background noise. The person still feels uncertainty, but they no longer wait for certainty to begin. They move while fear watches, and with each movement, fear loses influence and action regains its place. Comfort weakens decision-making. Power because it removes the necessity to choose with strength. When life is easy, the mind becomes careless. It stops measuring consequences and starts seeking pleasure. Decisions are no longer guided by vision but by convenience. The person does not ask what is right or what is necessary, they ask what feels good now. In this shift, authority over the self-cue quietly changes hands. Instead of commanding circumstances, the individual begins negotiating with them. Comfort creates the illusion that time is unlimited. When nothing demands urgency, effort loses its edge. The mind delays choices because delay feels harmless. Tomorrow becomes a promise that never matures into action. Each postponed decision trains the mind to hesitate. Over time, hesitation becomes habit. The person believes they are being patient, but in reality, they are practicing avoidance. Strong decisions require tension between desire and discipline. Comfort dissolves this tension and leaves only desire. A comfortable mind dislikes difficulty. It interprets challenge as danger and effort as inconvenience. When a hard choice appears, comfort whispers that there is no need to rush, no need to risk, no need to stretch. The mind accepts this advice because it costs nothing in the moment. Yet every choice made for comfort carries a hidden cost, paid later in weakness. The person B begins to choose the familiar over the necessary, the safe over the meaningful, the small over the significant. Decision-making power grows through resistance. It strengthens when the mind is trained to act despite discomfort. Comfort removes resistance and therefore removes training. A person who never pushes against difficulty never discovers their capacity to decide firmly. Their choices become reactions instead of commands. They follow routines instead of creating plans. They move where the path is smooth instead of where the destination is worthy. Comfort also narrows vision. When the present is pleasant, the future loses importance. Long-term goals appear less urgent than short-term ease. The mind becomes short-sighted. It prefers immediate relief over lasting reward. This weakens judgment because true decisions require weighing tomorrow against today. Comfort persuades the mind to ignore tomorrow entirely. It teaches the person to live in fragments of time, satisfied with small pleasures and blind to larger possibilities. In comfort, fear changes form. It no longer looks like danger, it looks like disturbance. The person does not fear failure as much as they fear inconvenience. They do not avoid action because it is impossible, but because it is uncomfortable. This type of fear is subtle and therefore powerful. It hides behind reason. It says, there is no need to push now, you deserve rest, wait until conditions are better. Each of these statements sounds wise, yet each one delays growth. Comfort weakens decision-making by reducing self-trust. When a person avoids difficult choices, they lose confidence in their ability to handle them. They begin to believe they are fragile. This belief shapes future decisions. The mind chooses smaller challenges because it assumes larger ones are beyond reach. What began as a desire for ease becomes a belief in limitation. A comfortable environment also encourages dependence. When needs are easily met, initiative decline. The person waits for systems, people, or luck to provide what effort once supplied. Their decisions become passive. They choose from what is offered instead of creating options. This shift from creator to consumer weakens authority over life. The mind that once decided now selects from leftovers. Decision-making power requires discomfort because every important choice involves sacrifice. To choose one path is to refuse another. Comfort resists refusal. It wants everything without cost. When the mind tries to avoid loss, it also avoids commitment. Without commitment, decisions become shallow. They are made without depth and reversed without pain. Such decisions carry no force because they carry no price. A person who seeks comfort first learns to justify weakness. They explain delay as caution and inaction as wisdom. Their language becomes soft, and so does their will. Over time, they lose the sharpness of resolve. The ability to say no fades. The ability to say yes with conviction aids with it. Choices become negotiations with feelings instead of commands from purpose. Comfort does not remove problems, it postpones them. It does not solve conflict, it covers it. While the mind rests in ease, unresolved issues grow. When they finally demand attention, they require stronger decisions than before. Yet the mind, trained in comfort, feels unprepared. What could have been chosen easily earlier now appears overwhelming. The power to decide is the power to direct life. Comfort turns direction into drift. It replaces intention with habit and courage with convenience. The person still chooses, but their choices are guided by ease rather than aim. Each comfortable decision weakens the next one, and each avoided difficulty trains the mind to expect escape. In this way, comfort does not attack decision-making directly. It softens it, distracts it, and slowly removes its strength until the mind forgets how to choose with authority. Failure teaches only the disciplined mind Beck. Aw's discipline determines whether an experience becomes instruction or punishment. Two people can face the same defeat and leave with opposite results. One walks away discouraged, carrying resentment and blame. The other walks away wiser, carrying understanding and direction. The difference is not in the failure itself, but in the attitude that meets it. An undisciplined mind feels attacked by failure. A disciplined mind feels addressed by it. Failure speaks in a harsh language. It does not explain itself gently. It demands interpretation. The mind that lacks discipline reacts emotionally instead of analytically. It asks, "Why did this happen to me?" instead of "What can this teach me?" Emotion turns failure into a personal insult. Discipline turns it into information. Without discipline, the mind searches for excuses. With discipline, the mind searches for causes. The undisciplined mind avoids responsibility. It blames timing, people, conditions, and luck. Each excuse may sound reasonable, but it steals the lesson hidden in the defeat. When responsibility is rejected, growth is rejected with it. Failure cannot teach a person who refuses to listen. The disciplined mind, however, claims ownership of results. It does not deny external factors, but it focuses on internal control. It asks what could have been done better, what must be changed, what must be strengthened. Failure also tests persistence. A disciplined mind does not confuse a setback with a stop signal. It understands that progress often travels through resistance. It sees failure as part of movement, not the end of it. The undisciplined mind sees failure as proof of inability. It treats one loss as a final judgment. Discipline understands that failure is a temporary state, not a permanent identity. Learning from failure requires calm reflection. Discipline provides this calm. It prevents panic and self-pity from dominating thought. It allows space for analysis. What decision was weak? What preparation was missing? What belief was faulty? These questions are painful, but they are productive. The undisciplined mind avoids such questions because they threaten comfort. It prefers denial to discovery. Failure also exposes habits. It reveals where effort was inconsistent, where focus was scattered, where commitment was shallow. The disciplined mind welcomes this exposure. It understands that weakness revealed is weakness that can be corrected. The undisciplined mind hides from exposure. It pretends nothing was wrong or insists that correction is impossible. In doing so, it repeats the same patterns and calls the results unfair. Discipline gives failure a future. Without discipline, failure below. NGS only to the past, it becomes a memory of pain. With discipline, failure becomes a map for improvement. It points to skills that must be developed and attitudes that must be replaced. The disciplined mind treats failure like a report, not a verdict. It studies it, extracts meaning, and applies changes. Failure also challenges self-image. The undisciplined mind needs to feel superior or safe. When failure appears, it threatens this image, so the mind protects itself by rejecting the lesson. Discipline allows humility. It accepts that error is part of growth. It allows the person to be wrong without feeling worthless. This emotional strength is what turns loss into wisdom. The disciplined mind separates result from effort. It understands that effort can be sincere and still be flawed. It does not defend mistakes just because they were made with good intention. It improves method instead of defending pride. The undisciplined mind defends the self instead of correcting the action. Pride blocks the lesson that failure is offering. Failure also trains patience. Lessons from defeat are rarely immediate. They require time and repetition to be understood fully. Discipline keeps the mind steady during this process. It prevents impulsive changes and emotional decisions. It allows adjustments to be thoughtful rather than desperate. The undisciplined mind reacts too quickly. It changes direction without understanding the reason for change. Failure teaches only the disciplined mind because discipline creates structure for learning. It turns pain into data and disappointment into direction. Without discipline, failure becomes a story of injustice. With discipline, it becomes a story of preparation. One produces bitterness, the other produces skill. The disciplined mind does not ask how to escape failure, it asks how to use it. It does not wish it away, it studies it. It does not allow it to destroy belief, it allows it to refine belief. Through this process, failure stops being an enemy and becomes a harsh instructor. Where discipline is absent, failure repeats. Where discipline is present, failure evolves into success in a different form. Self-command determines destiny because every outward result begins as an inward decision. Long before a person shapes events, they shape their responses. The power to choose one's thoughts, emotions, and actions forms the foundation of every future outcome. Those who command themselves do not wait for circumstances to improve. They improve themselves and thereby change their circumstances. Destiny is not written by chance, but by the repeated exercise of inner control. Self-command begins with the ability to govern impulse. An undirected impulse seeks pleasure and avoids effort. A directed will seeks purpose and accepts effort. When impulse rules, decisions are short-lived and inconsistent. When self-command rules, decisions are deliberate and sustained. A person who cannot refuse a temporary desire cannot achieve a lasting aim. Each small victory over impulse strengthens authority over the self, and each surrender weakens it. Destiny grows out of these daily victories and defeats. The mind is the seat of command. Thoughts become instructions to the body. Beliefs become orders to behavior. If a person allows fear, doubt, and resentment to issue commands, their actions will reflect those emotions. If a person trains courage, faith, and discipline to speak first, their actions will follow those qualities instead. Self-command is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to decide which emotion is permitted to lead. A person without self-command becomes reactive. They move according to moods, opinions, and events. Their direction changes with every disturbance. Such a life appears busy but lacks progress. A person with self-command becomes proactive. They move according to intention. They remain steady while conditions change. This steadiness creates reliability, and reliability creates opportunity. The word LD entrusts responsibility to those who can control themselves. Self-command also governs time. Those who lack it waste time through indecision and distraction. They confuse motion with movement and activity with achievement. Those who possess it invest time with purpose. They choose what deserves attention and what must be ignored. In this way, time becomes an ally rather than an enemy. Destiny is shaped not by how much time a person has, but by how well they direct it. The ability to command oneself strengthens character. Character is the pattern of choices repeated over time. A person who chooses discipline today will find discipline choosing them tomorrow. A person who chooses avoidance today will find avoidance shaping their future. Character is not inherited, it is trained. Self-command is the training ground of character. When hardship appears, self-command becomes most visible. The uncontrolled mind seeks escape. The controlled mind seeks meaning. The uncontrolled will blames company, conditions. The controlled will searches for adjustment. Hardship does not decide destiny, response to hardship does. A person who remains master of their reactions during difficulty multiplies their strength. A person who loses control during difficulty multiplies their weakness. Self-command also determines the quality of relationships. A person who cannot control anger spreads conflict. A person who cannot control desire spreads disorder. A person who cannot control speech spreads misunderstanding. Mastery of the self brings harmony to the environment. The one who rules themselves rarely needs to rule others. The greatest freedom is found in self-command. It is freedom from the tyranny of habit, from the noise of fear, from the pressure of the crowd. A person who governs their own conduct cannot be easily governed by circumstance. They carry stability within them, and this stability attracts trust and cooperation. Destiny is often described as a mystery, but its pattern is simple. Though youths shape decisions, decisions shape actions, actions shape habits, habits shape character, character shapes destiny. At every stage, self-command is the deciding force. Remove it and the chain breaks into chaos. Strengthen it and the chain becomes unbreakable. The person who commands themselves does not depend on motivation. They depend on decision. They do not wait for courage. They practice it. They do not wait for clarity. They create it through movement. Their life becomes a series of chosen directions rather than accidental turns. Self-command is quiet power. It does not announce itself. It reveals itself through consistency. It shows in the refusal to quit, in the willingness to learn, in the discipline to persist. The world sees only results, but those results are born from inner authority exercised day after day. Where self-command rules, destiny follows its lead.